The date is June 20th, 1947. One of the highest profile unsolved murder cases in history takes place. As infamous mobster and founder of modern-day Las Vegas, Bugsy Siegel is shot dead in his girlfriend's Beverly Hills home.
Was it a mob hit orchestrated by his childhood best friend, a vengeful girlfriend, or a love triangle gone wrong? Decades later, we have the answer.
But to find out who killed Bugsy, we have to look into the complex history of the casino that made Vegas what it is today. Welcome to the Heist Crew deep dive into the twisted origin of the Flamingo.
There's only one way to tell a story though, and we sent our top travel correspondents to get a first-hand look.
Welcome to the casino that started it all, the Flamingo! But before we dive into the Flamingo, our story truly begins in Brooklyn in the early 1900s. Bugsy Siegel was an infamous mobster and ex-member of Murder Incorporated, who got his nickname from the most 1930s expression ever, as crazy as a bedbug.
Bugsy grew up in Brooklyn during the 1910s, dropping out of school to join the East Side Gang. He was a wise guy from a young age, getting into pickpocketing and setting up arson protection rackets all over New York City.
To clarify, this meant protection from his own arson.
What?
Not a rival gang. He was creating supply and demand, like a true entrepreneur would. It was around this time that Bugsy would meet his childhood friend, Meyer Lansky, which he would later go on to form the Bugs and Meyer mob with in the 1920s.
With Lansky the brains and Bugsy the brawn, the two ran all sorts of rackets together, from protection to illegal gambling, truck hijacking, and even murder. They did work for tons of different clientele, but most of their work was done with the ambitious young mobsters Charles Lucky Luciano, Mo Sedway, and Frank Costello. It was through these connections that Bugsy Siegel would rise to power. But to best explain this meteoric rise, we brought in a real retired mobster.
It's me, a Leadfoot Meek, Heist Crew's mob guy, unless you're a Fed. Now let me explain some mob history. Now, Luciano's ascent into the mob really began with the 1930 mob war going on in New York City between the two families led by Joe Mazzaria and Salvatore Maranzano. Now, Luciano was second command to Mazzaria on his side of the war. Seeing Mazzaria losing the war, Luciano made a secret deal, switching alliances to Maranzano to take care of his old boss. In exchange, he'd be the second-hand man in the new mob era. Now, who else but Bugsy does he turn to take care of the hit? The job took place in a Coney Island restaurant where Luciano conveniently went to the bathroom. I think I gotta take a leak.
Come on, we're in the middle of the game.
I said I gotta take a leak.
Not only has Lucky Luciano climbed the corporate ladder, so has our boy Bugsy, with Siegel just taking out one of the highest ranking New York mob members ever and getting on the good side of the Italian Mafia, putting his clout and credibility at an all-time high.
For a while, Luciano was pretended to be happy being the assistant to the regional Don, but secretly he was planning to orchestrate a bigger hit that would make him big tuna. So who else did he turn to but his trusted associates, Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, who hired a few hitmen to take care of Maranzano. These hitmen supposedly dressed up as, pets and disarmed Maranzano's men and then played hide the knife a couple times.
Hello, officers. How may I help you? Why? Oh, no! Oh, it's my 10-year-old! No! Oh, dear! Oh, Mommy always said back in my hometown, oh, Sally, you shouldn't enter this line of work.
Luciano's luck had not run out, though, and he rose to the very top after what many called a mob civil war. In the aftermath, he and Meyer Lansky founded the National Crime Syndicate, a full governing body of organized crime that made the gangs and mafias involved virtually unstoppable. But why should you care about any of this complicated mob history? Well, you need to understand the crazy amount of trust the mob had in Bugsy at this point. After all, you need an insane amount of street cred to be able to go out into the middle of the desert and start your own casino with mob money. At this point, the mob had entrusted Bugsy to try to sell bombs to Benito Mussolini and lead an expedition in Costa Rica to find buried treasure. So yeah, the mob had a lot of faith in this guy.
Now that he's playing with the big dogs, the New York City Police Department starts to watch him a little too closely. Which is typical for a 12-time murderer.
Did you get that?
My fault, lens cap was on. Because of the 5-star wanted level, Bugsy moved out to California and was put in charge of expanding the crime syndicate into the LA gambling rackets. He excelled in this role and became a bit of a Hollywood celebrity and started bumping uglies with actors and actresses and even got his own Beverly Hills mansion. It was around this time that he started dating his girlfriend and actress Virginia Hill, who was nicknamed the Flamingo.
She would also become the only woman to be considered a legit mob associate. Because of this, the titular Flamingo was given the low-stress job of keeping an eye on the mob's trusty mass murder. Bugsy wanted to blaze his own trail outside of Hollywood, packing his bags and moving to sunny Las Vegas in hopes of cashing in on that gambling scene to build his image and expand his empire into legitimate business. He purchased the Cortez Hotel and Casino for $600K and wanted to expand it to make more money, but the Nevada government was not feeling it.
Hey, ain't you the feller what did them 16 murders in New York City town?
Since Bugsy couldn't expand the Cortez, he needed to find another way to cash in on that Vegas action. And while lucky for him, the stars aligned when he heard that a Hollywood newspaper magnate needed investors for a project that would change Las Vegas forever. That man's name was Billy Wilkerson. Many historians call him the godfather of Hollywood, and well, he looks like an evil Walt Disney, and was. He started his career as a producer, but had to change paths after a rival studio burnt down his studio. Billy decided to get into an even more flammable business, newspapers. This would lead him to create the highly influential news publication, The Hollywood Reporter.
His newspaper gave Wilkerson the power to destroy people's careers, a power that he exercised way too often. He gathered this information from celebrities at his restaurants, where he hosted high-stakes poker games in the back. He heard all of Hollywood's dirtiest secrets directly from celebrities and also took their money, and a lot of it.
Yeah, I heard Jamie and Nate are having an affair. Anyway, put it all on 42 Black. I've never played poker.
Wilkerson did get high in his own product though, and was a well-known degenerate gambler and mob affiliate. He relied on the mob so much when it came to his nightclub that he owed them a massive debt. Dude gambled so much that his friends told him he should just own the house. And he took that to heart and headed over to the newly established Las Vegas to open a new style of casino.
This wasn't the Vegas that we know and tolerate just yet. At the time, Vegas consisted of only a few rustic motels, with only 2 or 3 being located on the now world-famous Strip. Wilkerson wanted to build a glamorous casino for the Hollywood elite to come gamble their lives away in sunny Nevada, complete with spas, restaurants, nightclubs, and showrooms.
Feeling overwhelmed? Good. So was Wilkerson. So much, as a matter of fact, that after buying the land for the Flamingo, he ended up getting some cold feet and decided to lease the El Rancho for 6 months to, quote, get his feet wet. But in actuality, he ended up gambling away half of the $1 million budget away. Oh, and adjusted for inflation, he lost over $8.7 million. With only half the original budget left and no construction to show for it, he was left in a pretty rough spot. You can probably guess where this is going. To Wilkerson's surprise, the friendly Chicago businessman who wanted to fund this project was none other than a front to yours truly, Bugsy Siegel. Before Wilkerson, a known mob affiliate, could realize it, it was too late and the deal was signed.
On paper, Bugsy was the answer to all of Wilkerson's prayers. He had the Hollywood connections and the mob money to back him. He could have made the casino a massive hit. But unfortunately for Wilkerson, Bugsy's plan for the casino didn't include a business partner.
Bugsy wanted Wilkerson out of the picture, so he decided to pull some old mob tricks, like forcing contractors to charge Wilkerson twice for labor and materials, but decided to bring that to the extreme, with having his LA palm trees delivered to Vegas just to send them back to LA to be delivered to the Flamingo again for double the price. And on top of that, he decided to piss Wilkerson off by taking credit for his ideas, like the name of the Flamingo, which Bugsy claimed was named after his girlfriend. But the name was picked way before Bugsy was ever involved in the project. This wasn't an effective strategy, and ended up costing Bugsy way more than it did him any good. Not only has he blown through the original construction budget without doing, much construction, he ended up pissing off more than just Wilkerson, his mob investors, and it didn't stop there.
With prices rising due to a certain war, and Bugsy lacking any knowledge of construction, he went back to his roots of threatening people, encouraging workers to pick up the pace on the casino. One contractor even told a story of Bugsy walking up to him and started flexing his murder numbers as a scare tactic.
I have murdered 16 men.
You should probably kill me too before my wife's meatloaf does. Huh? Alright, I see.
At this point, money was tighter than ever. Bugsy decided to demand cash from Wilkerson. But shockingly, he was all out of money. Bugsy, who was furious, convened a meeting with all mob investors, threatening Wilkerson to hand over his shares or face dire consequences. Terrified and rightfully so, Wilkerson agreed, receiving a 5% stake in Bugsy's construction company that he only created to cut costs on the Flamingo. Wilkerson, scared out of his mind, fled to Paris, soon sending back a release of all demands, severing all ties from the Flamingo.
Wilkerson had officially lost all connection to his original dream project, and as you can see, he did not get his own plaque. Now Bugsy could start to add some of his personal flair to the Flamingo. He started by building himself a lavish presidential suite, which used to sit right here in this garden. He equipped this suite with bulletproof windows, an escape ladder, and a 24/7 chauffeured limo to get him out of town at a moment's notice.
These innovations were costly, and Bugsy was no master contractor. His gross underestimation of the construction budget and total mismanagement of funds made him $5 million over budget upon opening. Bugsy had also been stealing from the construction budget to fund his lifestyle, which was brought to the mob's attention by his partner Mo Sedway. You might remember him from the Bugsy and Meyer mob days. Mo's snitching had officially dried up Bugsy's street cred, and he was on the hot seat with the mob. Bugsy needed a great opening, or it might just cost him his life.
Unfortunately for Bugsy though, some bad weather prevented the guests from Hollywood from ever making it to Vegas, and the casino hemorrhaged money. Because of this, the mob was getting angrier and angrier about the lack of return on investment from Bugsy's casino. Now, the rumor of Bugsy being in some trouble began to spread. Bugsy reopened the casino only a few months after, and shit was running smoothly, and he returned a profit of $250,000 in the first month alone. He repaid investors, things were looking great. But it may have been too late.
June 20th, 1947, was a night like any other. Bugsy was back in Beverly Hills a few months after the casino's reopening, staying at his girlfriend Virginia Hill's apartment on North Linden Drive. Around 9 p.m. he arrived home from dinner with his best friend Alan Smiley, his girlfriend's brother Chick Hill, and her secretary. Virginia Hill had left for Europe 10 days earlier after one of her and Bugsy's many fights. When they arrived home, Chick and Virginia's secretary went upstairs to get cozy, while Bugsy and Alan Smiley read newspapers in the living room. At 10:45 p.m., a hail of gunfire came crashing through the window. Smiley dove for cover as he heard the glass shatter, but the shots weren't for him. Bugsy Siegel was hit in the head and chest area many times, and Alan Smiley could only sit in shock as he saw his best friend lying lifeless on the couch. By 11 p.m., Benjamin Bugsy Siegel was pronounced dead.
After years of taking out top mobsters and rival gangs, Bugsy has finally met his end. Now, the question still arises, who carried out the hit? Now, many mobsters from this era have been asked this question on their deathbed, and none of them really having any reason to withhold information has not been able to name a single soul. So 76 years later, the case is still cold. Now it's time for us to ask the question of who killed Bugsy Siegel.
Billy Wilkerson. I know, on paper, it seems perfect. Not only is Wilkerson a part of the reason Bugsy got into this whole mess, his motive is clear after Siegel hijacked his dream project and left him nothing to show for it. But on the other hand, this isn't a Scorsese movie. To say this was Wilk's first run-in with the mob would be a massive understatement. He moved from the East Coast to LA to escape the mob who he owed a large gambling debt. A debt he couldn't pay. But that move came at a price. His sister-in-law disappeared without a trace while the family was on the run, with police never finding her or a body. He knew messing with the mob was no joke, making it highly unlikely that he'd be the one to carry out a hit on such a top-ranked mafioso. The mob left an impression on Billy Wilkerson. After the Flamingo, when it came time to run from Bugsy, he fled to a post-World War II Paris, where he stayed there until he heard the news about Bugsy's rub-out. The only thing he's guilty of is a catty hit piece on the Flamingo from Paris. This means his alibi checks out, and not even the FBI considered him a potential suspect, with no leads or evidence pointing directly to him. But there is a person they kept a very close eye on.
Virginia Hill. This theory suggests that the real reason Bugsy was shot was not because of the Flamingo you're thinking about. It was his abusive relationship with the other Flamingo, Virginia Hill. It's believed one reason Bugsy originally moved to Las Vegas was the heat he had on him from the LAPD after assaulting Hill. He ended up weaseling his way out of it though and asked Hill to move with him. Shockingly, she refused, but was later forced to go by her friends in the mob to, quote, keep an eye on Bugsy. The abuse only continued from there. That led one of Virginia's brothers to enact revenge on Bugsy. Bob or Bill, no one really knows his name, allegedly saw bruises on Virginia and threatened to kill Bugsy in front of his casino workers after coming home from World War II. Bob was a Marine, and the camp he was stationed at would have placed him only 2 hours from where Bugsy was turned into a fine red mist. This theory explains why Virginia Hill was able to get out of town during the incident, and why Chick Hill was present at the dinner. However, that's where the evidence for this theory ends. Chick Hill was questioned about the incident, but Bob never was. The biggest advocate for this theory is actually Meyer Lansky, who believes Bugsy was killed as a result of his mistreatment of Miss Hill. We don't blame anyone for believing this theory, but based on FBI records, it doesn't really seem like Virginia was capable of doing something like this. She struggled heavily with mental illness throughout her life, and after Bugsy's murder and fear that she might be next, Virginia started having full-on mental breakdowns that were well documented in the press.
By this point in our investigation, we began to wonder, had we been looking at this too narrowly? We were pinning Bugsy's murder on just a couple of players while missing the bigger picture. What if this wasn't just a murder but a conspiracy? What if in the end, it wasn't personal at all? What if it was just business? And well, we know a few investors who weren't too happy with Bugsy, the mob.
Now, the second most popular theory is that the mob carried out the hit. Now, Meyer Lansky was known to defend Bugsy from the mob, but he did owe $6 million to some high-profile wise guys. One of those guys being Lucky Luciano. People speculate that Meyer Lansky could only hold off the mob for so long, and he finally caved in after the 1946 mob summit in Cuba, where all the mob leaders agreed that Bugsy needed to go.
Tell me about the flamingos, Maya.
From the mob's view, the $6 million was a lot, but in today's money, it's $80 million. And personally, if Nate owed me $80 million, I would probably have him whacked off too.
Finally, some action!
But Bugsy was accused of not only skimming off the construction funds, but also skimming off the profits of the casino.
Hey Bugsy, I want to talk some quick finance. So I only have like 3 flamingos at the hotel, so why did you order 26,000 pounds of krill?
Even though this all adds up on paper, we don't believe the mob directly ordered the hit. And here's why. Although the opening of the casino was a disaster, after completing construction, Bugsy had it firing on all cylinders a mere 3 months later, generating $10 million in revenue in the first 4 weeks. This means he would have been able to pay back his investors very quickly, and we believe Meyer Lansky would have been able to hold off the mob for that long. Lansky has even been quoted as saying that if it were up to him, Bugsy would still be alive. More evidence that the mob didn't orchestrate the hit is that this style of shooting would have been a little outdated for the mob at the time, as the heavy spray of bullets came from 14 feet behind Bugsy outside the house. At this time, it would have been much more common for the mob to shoot from directly behind the head, commonly in the back seat of a car, to make sure there was no chance of missing.
For 67 years, this is all we ever had to go on. Whether it was his spending habits or his asshole behavior, Bugsy Siegel was most likely killed by the mob. But there was always something missing. Evidence. There were no clear links between the mob and his death, no solid leads, and a surprising silence surrounding the whole case. That is, until 2014, when investigative journalist Amy Wallace uncovered something huge. Something that would forever change the way people viewed this murder. Now being shared with the world for the very first time. With all pieces lining up, the full story begins to finally take shape.
Amy learned about all this and who Bugsy's hitman was from an unreleased book proposal written by Mo Sedway's wife, B. Sedway, which was called Bugsy's Little Lunatic. She wanted to release her story over the guilt she felt. But before the book's release, B's son Robbie retracted permission of its release in fear of mob retaliation. So the book never came out, and the story was never released. However, many years after, Robbie Sedway on his deathbed reveals what he calls the true story of who killed Bugsy.
There's a story around the mob get. Nobody really knows what happened with Siegel. That murder has never been solved.
Not killed for money, he was killed for love.
No, Sid, I just hope some publisher publishes my book to hear the truth.
Bugsy was doing what he did best, overspending the mob's money and skimming off the top of the Flamingo's profits. Except, this time, Meyer Lansky had a man on the inside keeping track of Bugsy's spending, and that man was Mo Sedway. Mo had been snitching to Lansky that Bugsy was misusing the mob's money, and when Bugsy caught wind of this, he called a meeting of all the mobsters in Las Vegas. He told them that he wanted Mo dead, and he wanted to chop him up and feed him to the hotel garbage disposal. Mo heard the rumors and rightfully got scared. He told his wife B that his days might be numbered, but B had a solution. At the time, she was having an affair with Matthew Moose Panza, and she offered his services to protect her husband. She told Mo that Moose would be his bodyguard, day and night.
Like any sane person, Mo was confused why Moose would even do that for him. But B stated he would do anything for me. So Moosey Boy was packed up and shipped to Vegas, and the two sides of the love triangle became inseparable. B often joking that she lost her lover to her husband. While this worked for a while, the stress of being on Bugsy's hit list became too much, and Mo decided that Bugsy needed to go. And Moose simply replied with, "What other answer is there?" Unfortunately for Mo, Flamingo Man was considered untouchable by the mob, and killing him would require special permission from the top bosses. However, Mo had been a loyal friend of Meyer Lansky over the years, so he would go to him about killing Bugsy. Meyer gave him his blessing. He was finally fed up with Bugsy's shit, but he made one condition. No one in the mob family could be involved. Mo was stumped. How could he carry out a hit against Bugsy without any mob involvement? And then it hit him. Who else but Moose the Slavic truck driver would carry out the hit?
Hey guys, knock knock. I need a favor.
Together, Mo, B, and Moose were responsible for pulling off the hit. And if our story holds true, B was the mastermind behind it all. Moose borrowed a rifle from his friend and would go out to the desert to practice his shooting. He also followed B's instructions to monitor police patrols on Linden Drive, so he would know exactly when to pull off the hit. On the night of June 20th, Panza followed Bugsy home. He quietly crept up to the window, propped his gun up on the ledge, fired 9 shots into the mobster, and took off without a trace. Patrol cars and neighbors were there within minutes, but no one caught a glimpse of Moose, and the only thing they had on him was a black car speeding out of the neighborhood. Moose kept driving till he hit Santa Monica, where he took apart the rifle and threw the parts in the ocean and the butt on a roof. Within minutes, Mo Sedway walked into the Flamingo and claimed he was in charge.
The craziest part, if this story is true, Moose got away with killing one of the highest ranking Mafia members in its prime. Now, it's unclear if Moose was ever questioned about the crime, but no one was ever taken into custody. The biggest catch about these series of events is that B was the only primary source, and no one was able to corroborate the story outside her immediate family. That was until reporter Amy Wallace tracked down Moose's family, and they confirmed that he spent time in Vegas, and they had some suspicions about Moose, saying that he would do anything for B. Other evidence that points to B's story being true is an alleged redacted FBI report, where an agent claims he full-heartedly believes that Mo Sedway engineered the killing. Additionally, the Beverly Hills police chief who headed the investigation has been quoted as saying, quote, "If you want to know who killed Bugsy Siegel, talk to the Sedways."
We do admit that this story might just be too perfect, and with everyone in it long past, there's really no way to validate the claims. However, we're calling it. Moose whacked Bugsy because it's the only story that checks every box in our checklist. It's the only one where the mob would simultaneously not know who did the hit, but still be involved in its orchestration through Lansky. It also explains why the cops were never able to name a suspect in their investigation into mob activities in Beverly Hills. Finally, it would legitimize other stories of the heads of the mob wanting Bugsy dead, but it not being a traditional method of mob killing.
Let us know what you guys think. Is Moose guilty or is he fucking guilty? Anyways, guys, if you have your own theories or if you're a secret relative to an old mobster and you know the truth, let us know down below.
Hilton owned the Flamingo for many years, and shockingly, they wanted to separate themselves away from Bugsy as far as they could. But in 2005, when Caesar Casino purchased the Flamingo, for whatever reason, they wanted to bring back the lovable family mascot, Bugsy.
They gave him a plaque outside, a photo behind where you exchange your chips, a bar, and even a steakhouse named for him and his old pal Meyer, which my dad says is pretty good.
At the end of the day, while the Flamingo might seem like any other dingy Vegas casino with a very standard amount of crack and prostitutes, it actually has a pretty fabulous history as the first casino on the Strip that started the mob's rise to power in Las Vegas. Also, if you ever stay there, you can see Piff the Magic Dragon, RuPaul's Drag Race, and even a burlesque show, all without leaving your hotel. Thanks, Bugsy, and thanks for watching.
But guys, thank you so much. If you liked what you see, let us know with like, commenting, subscribing, all that above. It helps us out. Guys, thank you so much for the support in the last video too. I just wanted to say that to your face. And yeah, so if you guys have a deep dive or an investigation you want us to look into, make sure you let us know. Or if you have a cool video series you want us to try, let us know down below. Thank you guys. We love you. Peace out and see you next video.
Punch it, Margaret!
You know, I have murdered 16 men. Well, you should kill me before my wife's meatloaf does. Oh, that wasn't funny.
Fuck! Bob was a Marine. 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 Shut the fuck up. I can't do this. Did you know Bob was a Marine?